Hello and welcome to the Crafty Contemplations Knitting and Creative Podcast. Hi, my name is Val, and this is episode 1 of the Crafty Contemplations podcast. Hopefully, everything goes well. I am really excited. I thought I would start by just sharing a little bit about myself, a little bit about my knitting journey, and just a little bit about my interest in the knitting community. So, about me, I live in Tampa, Florida. I live with my husband, and we have an 18-month daughter. She is wonderful, and we have 2 dogs and 2 cats. So we definitely have a little bit of chaos happening over here. Um, we live in a pretty small house, so this is my crafting space that I'm in right now. It's our office space. So my husband and I each have a desk. And so we each have our own little corners of the space. But as you can see from behind me, all the vertical storage is pretty much my crafting supplies. So I thought that would be a perfect place to sit down and chat with you for a little while. By trade, I am an art teacher in Hillsborough County. I teach high school. So I believe that everybody deserves a creative hobby. I tell that to my students, and I, really just want to share how important those creative pursuits are to me. I love all kinds of things from drawing and painting to, knit and crochet and the fiber arts, which will be a little bit more of my focus for this. But I'd like to share, a little bit about my creative journey overall, and I hope you'll be interested in that. Um, I first kind of discovered knitting podcasts only about 18 months ago, in fact. So basically, when my daughter was born, I was, well, I still am nursing her, but at the time I was nursing her a lot. And if anybody's been through it, you know what I mean about those late nights and, just trying to keep yourself awake and keep this tiny human alive. Um, so I somehow stumbled across and went down the rabbit hole of knitting podcasts on YouTube. So shout out especially to the Crayabea and the Meaningful Stitch podcasts, because I basically binged those 2 podcasts first and then kind of never looked back. So it was really great for me at that time. As you can imagine, I was not hands free very often. I was, dealing with a newborn. So I didn't really have much time to craft for myself. So being able to watch those podcasts was, a little bit of like a way to scratch that creative itch. Um, and it was nice to just have some company as I was, up at all hours of the night. So that is kind of how my interest in the knitting podcast community started. So in starting this podcast, I am just looking for a little bit of um, community, the online community. And I really like the aspect of accountability and just being able to share about my creative process a little bit more in depth. So, welcome along for the ride. um, I'll also share just a little bit about how I got started knitting. So, I learned how to knit in one of the summers of middle school. So, my maternal grandmother lived with us growing up, and she was a little bit of a hoarder. So I don't really remember exactly how it came up, but I was probably home bored one day and she handed me a whole stack of knitting magazines, some good old Red Heart acrylic yarn, and a whole pile of knitting needles. I think one of her relatives must have knit at some point because she didn't knit, but in any case, I started in on looking at some of those tutorials in the magazines. And as I went on in knitting, I was able to find much more resources. So YouTube, as you might imagine. I also learned how to crochet But yeah, I basically just started from like very analog, right? Very paper, uh, and just kind of figuring out some patterns that came on like yarn labels and stuff like that. Um, and uh, it's kind of interesting. I started in that very analog fashion. So I have so many projects from back in the day, right? Middle school, high school, even college, that I have no record of, right? So, like, I followed a pattern on a yarn label and, made a blanket and then gifted that blanket to somebody, or, um, whatever some of those patterns were. Um, or some of those projects were. And so I don't really have a record of those. So something that I really, really appreciate about being more digital now, right? So potentially being on this podcast, certainly on Instagram, and then of course now that I'm on Ravelry. I mean, I've been on Ravelry for many years, but again, not at the start of my journey. Um, it's nice to have that digital record of, where where I've been, right? What projects I've made and how that's gone. So um, that's a little bit about my plan. So moving into the actual knitting, I thought we'd start with kind of a traditional setup. So I'll begin with what I'm wearing. So this is the Farnham Tee by the Knit Pearl Girl. Um, I knit this in, I don't remember the exact name of the yarn, but this is a wool cotton blend. Um, as I said, I live in Florida, so cotton is my friend. Um, and I think this is like a 70% cotton, maybe 30% wool blend, so definitely leans more into the cotton. Um, but I really loved this piece. The shoulder shaping was definitely um, attention uh attention heavy. It definitely took a bit to get everything picked up for that. And I know that I have a little bit of pick up uh, issues, or it's not necessarily as smooth as I would have hoped it was. That's definitely user error. But besides that, I absolutely love it. I've worn it several times. I did uh, follow the pattern pretty well. There's a twisted rib detail for all the edging, and I followed the stripe pattern pretty much exactly. So that's my Farnham Tee. All right, so my most recent finished object, the Obsidian sweater by the Wool Barrow. I test knit this sweater, and it was my first ever color work pattern. Um, so this is my finished sweater, and I'll put some pictures up as well so you can really get the full effect. But I was just absolutely in love with the color work pattern. And design. It's almost throughout the whole sweater. Um, so I knit this in Knit Picks Upcycle Alpaca, which I really liked. It's super soft. It did bleed a little bit when I washed and blocked it, but I just rinsed it, a couple extra times, and that was fine. It didn't leave any residue on the blocking mats or anything, so I think I should be good to go at this point. Um, but I absolutely loved the design. When I first saw her pictures on Instagram, they're just they're so good and so moody, and I was just all in immediately. So I knit a size 4. I used the recommended needles for the body. I did adjust, I think, the needles for the cuffs just based on what I had available. Although there is a little bit of a discrepancy here. Like, I don't know if you can tell that there's a little bit of a bulge there that you know, just it's not what I would prefer. So I may go back. I did re-up my needle situation recently, so I may go back and just touch up, just like along the neckline. I might rip that out and redo that, just so that it lies a little bit flatter. But that's really the only spot where it made a difference to me. Um, In fact, the cuffs, which I used the same size needles that I did on the neckband, but the cuffs fit around my hand and wrist pretty much perfectly. I actually wouldn't want them to be any much smaller. So I think it worked out pretty well. Because this was pretty labor intensive, I have had a couple projects on the back burner now. So I am going to share some whips that I'm working on. Um, I have one that I have two that I'm actually working on right now, and then I have a couple that have been sitting. They've been sitting for a little while. Um, I have even one more, I think, that is just absolutely languishing. Like, I think I'm gonna completely scrap it. Um, so I won't bother showing you that one, but I have four whips to show you to start. So my first one is the one that I've probably spent the most time on since I finished the Obsidian, and that is my Tolsta Tee. It's the Tolsta Tee by the Crayabea. Um, and I am doing the fingering version. If you're not familiar with this pattern, her thing is providing a lot of options in her patterns, which is really nice. So in this particular t-shirt pattern, she offers it in DK and in fingering weight. So I am about this far. I have split for sleeves. I'm about not quite, I think I'm just at or just under 3 inches worth of body. So I'm actually just uh, going around to around the bust area, and I'm gonna do. I decided to do bust darts for this. So I am about to add those in. I think I need like a half an inch more, and then I'll add those bust darts in. Um, but I really love this pattern. I um, actually cast this on twice, and I don't really know what happened the first time around. I just kind of lost it, and I think I had a needle issue as well, actually. So I ended up ripping that back. Um, so this is my second official variation of it, but this one is what I'm going to see through to completion. Um, so I wanted to share the modification that I've made, and this is just based off of some of the modifications that Rebecca provided in her pattern. So what I've done here is I've just done 8 rows of stockinette, and then I'm alternating those stockinette rows with 1 row of pearls, and then the eyelet section, which is a row of pearl, the eyelets, which are knit 2 together, yarn over, and then another round of pearl before I head back into the stockinette. And so then I'm just alternating those. And I really love the texture that that's making. And we'll see when I'm done how dramatic the eyelets are. I might need to like wear a tank top or something underneath it. Um, but uh, but yeah, I'm super excited about this one. I think I'm on size 3 with this one. Um, and I'm using rainbow cotton from Hobbi in this really nice mauve color. I don't remember the exact colorway off the top of my head. Um, but, um, but yeah, I'm super, super excited. And the cotton is really soft. Um, so I think it'll be really nice once it's done. All right. Second one, this is the other one that I've been working on fairly regularly, but only like 1 or 2 rows at a time. So this is the Mount Kailash shawl, and this is a pattern. It's not on Ravelry. I got it on Interweave. Um, I I want to say that I came across it on Pinterest. I think that sounds right. Um, but I was immediately struck by this pattern. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Um, the and I'm in fact using the suggested yarn and in the exact same colorway um, from the pictures because I just loved it so much. So this is a crescent shaped shawl. So you can see here how the crescent has developed. And then the part that I'm working on right now is the lace portion, which is going to be the really the bulk of it. I think you can see it better without my hand actually. So it's got these beautiful back and forth zigzags of lace, and I I believe I'm doing 3 repeats of the chart, and I'm on repeat number 2. So I definitely have a ways to go. Um, but I am so excited for this shawl once it's actually complete. It's going to be super nice and lightweight, so probably really easy to wear as a scarf or around my shoulders. And I just love this colorway. So this is Malabrigo Baby Silkpaca lace, and the colorway is Archangel. And I really have been loving the combination of orange and purple lately. I don't know. It's just been my thing. So a couple things that have been um, making this particular project take a little bit longer. Number one, um, I haven't had the easiest time memorizing the chart just because it is changing every row. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It absolutely makes sense. Um, but it's just not necessarily that easy to memorize. Um, so I have to reference the chart um, basically every single row that I switch, and I have to have it in front of me for those first couple repeats before I can make it, across the rest of the row. The wrong side, so the pattern is happening on the knit side. The wrong side is just almost exclusively purl with just a couple of knit stitches as you go across. And pearls don't bother me, but it does take me a little bit longer than the knit stitch. So that is taking me a little while just because of, referencing. It's a little bit less of a TV knit just because I am looking at the pattern so often. The other thing is, I mean, it's lace weight. So the yarn itself is very fine. Beautiful, soft, but very fine. Um, so it does take a little bit more attention to detail in that matter, in that sense as well. I'm knitting it on 3.5 millimeter US size 4 needles, which is fairly small for me, I would say. So far my attention has been worth it. All right. So moving right along. Next up is, I caught a little bit of the yarn. Okay. Next up is a project that I have not taken out in quite some time. This is His Classic Crew by Knititude, and I am knitting it in Lion Brand Re-Spun, which is a 100% recycled polyester. I'll say that I like to have a nice blend of budget-friendly yarns in there. It makes everything go a little bit farther. So I really liked the fact that this is affordable, and I like the fact that it's recycled. It is much softer than I expected. I ordered some of it and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it, but I actually think it's going to work pretty well as a garment. I also like the fact that it's machine washable, so my husband is very hard on his clothes. So I wasn't sure that knitting him a really delicate care, hand wash sweater was necessarily the best idea. So we'll see. We'll see how this wears. I've actually gotten quite a bit farther than I realized. Sorry, it's quite crumply from being scrunched in my bag. I have pretty much the whole body done. I don't know how well you can see that. So there's a little, it's bottom up. So I've got just a little bit of ribbing. I've got the whole body in stockinette, and it looks like I've split for sleeves. So I think I left off working the back panel. So not bad. Actually, I probably should take this out and do a little bit of work on it, because it could probably go a little bit sooner than I anticipate. I've started this on US 7 needles. So what is that? My numbers are fading. I think it's 4.5 millimeters. So not bad. I really like this amber color. This is the amber colorway of the Re-Spun. Very fall. Um, very, very nice, warm, warm color. All right. So I have one more whip, and this whip has been my, I've even worked on this even throughout my Obsidian knit and such. This one is like my absolute mindless knit at the moment, which is just nice to have one in the background. And this is also a knititude pattern. This is the simple sweater scarf, like the original sweater scarf. So I've gone through one sleeve, which was knitted in the round, and I am, oh, I don't know, maybe halfway through the body, maybe a little more than halfway. I'll have to take it out and measure it. This is a really nice mauve color again. Oh, I've got a theme going, y'all. I have definitely a color theme happening here. But this is just super simple. There are a couple of 1x1 rib stitches at the corners, and then just plain stockinette knits and purls throughout this body portion of it. So just, you know, anywhere that I've taken it, waiting in line, or wait, you know, in the waiting room at the doctor's office or whatever. Just really nice to have something that's mindless as one of the options to just grab and go. So those are the 4 whips that I have going on right now. I also wanted to share some acquisitions, so some new yarn that I've picked up. I, as you can see, have, I mean, I have some yarn behind me. And there's a little bit more in the corner that you can't see. But I really don't like to buy yarn without a project in mind. So most of what you see up there has been earmarked for something. I definitely have quite a queue lined up of, you know, future projects. And that could change, but for the most part, I have an idea in mind if I'm purchasing yarn. But recently, one of my local-ish yarn shops is actually going out of business. So I say local-ish, it's really located about an hour and a half north of me, so it's not a place I would frequent. But the owner unfortunately passed away, really sad. And I think that I think the family was just trying to get everything settled and squared away, which is absolutely understandable, you know, in that time of grief. But they ended up putting everything, all of the product, up for a 50% off sale. So I had to get in on that on that little silver lining. So my husband was gracious enough to drive me up there. We bundled it with another trip, so we really only went about an hour out of our way to get to the yarn store. You know, half an hour there, half an hour to where we were actually going that day. So that was great, and I walked away with some really great deals, which is, as you know, not always the norm for this hobby of ours. So first one that I'll show you is, here it is, fell off my lap. This is Sandisgarn Lena, and it's in this beautiful mauve, again, theme, colorway. This is a Norwegian yarn, and it is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. And it comes in these little skeins. The store had them marked for $9 a piece, so 50% off. I got them for $4.50, which isn't bad. I actually bought the whole shelf that they had left, which was 10 skeins. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this yet. Like I said, I don't have anything earmarked for it. Definitely something summery, a tee, maybe a tank. I'll have to check yardage and see if I can get more than one thing out of 10 skeins. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if I can't get two like full size garments for me, then I can probably do like something for me and something for my daughter to match in. So we'll see. But that was the first purchase I made. The second purchase I made, you're gonna laugh, is 2 hanks of Malabrigo baby Silkpaca lace in Archangel. So this should look familiar because this is the exact same yarn that I have been using on my Mount Kailash wrap. I just loved it so much that I couldn't resist. These usually go for $13 a skein. So I paid 13 for 2 of them, which is, you know, fantastic. It's a lace weight, which is not like necessarily my go-to for garments. So I don't know if I'll end up holding this with something or if I'll do something else with it by itself, like another shawl, or maybe even just a very, very lightweight layer, which honestly could be very nice in Florida. So not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but absolutely love the color, absolutely love the yarn. So I could not resist those 2. Okay, and then the last one that I picked up, and this is a yarn company that is hand dyed in Florida. Not exactly sure where, but it's local. So these are 2 2 hanks from Emma's Yarn. So Emma's Yarn, and these are Hella Hank. I think it's like Hella Big Hank because these have 600 yards and 150 grams. So I bought 2, so that's 1,200 yards. These were $44 a piece, but I paid 22 for each. So I mean, I think that for a nicer yarn too, so it's 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. So definitely a pretty nice yarn. Feels really nice, feels very soft. So again, I don't really know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I think it'll make a beautiful sweater. I should have enough with 1,200 yards, I think, to get a good size sweater out of it. And it's hand dyed, but it's very subtle, beautiful color changes, but the colors flow really well. It's not a high contrast. So I don't know how I'll do it. I don't know if I'll alternate skeins or just kind of let the colors kind of sit where they will. But I'm really excited for whatever this ends up being. And this is fingering weight. So again, it'll be much more appropriate for the weather down here. All right. So the last thing that I thought I'd share with you is one of my other creative pursuits. So I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I'll share now that so I'm a art teacher in the public school system. And I am actually working on my master's degree in art education right now. It's been a great experience. I've learned a lot. And I think, honestly, one of the nicest things about the program is the studio classes that are a part of the requirement. So far I've taken painting. I'm taking graphic design right now. And the studio classes have provided me with a little bit of that like excuse, if you will, to sit down and like be making my own artwork. It's certainly true for me and for some of the other art teachers that I've spoken to, who are my colleagues or friends of mine, that when you spend all day teaching people how to do art, it can be hard to want to do art yourself when you get home at the end of the day. So these studio classes have just been really inspirational for me in terms of like keeping up with my own creative practice. I mentioned earlier that I think everybody deserves a creative hobby. and this is one of mine. I just haven't done it in a while. So all of that to say, I will share one of my paintings with you. This was one of my favorite paintings from my painting class. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet. I'd like to maybe hang it up. Um, Let me slide back so you can see a little bit more clearly. Um, so this is an acrylic painting. It's 16 by 20, and it is a gardenia flower, which is another nod to my grandmother. Um, I've talked about her twice today. Um, so I'll just share a few details with you. I used some impasto paste and a palette knife to kind of move some paint around the canvas and trying to combine some of these colors. For the petals, they are actually raised ridges, and I used the golden high flow iridescent gold to to do the gold outline on the tips of the petals. I also used a magenta, I believe magenta high flow acrylic to do the drips and the splatters. Um, so I am really happy with the way that this one turned out. We had to practice some different acrylic painting techniques and just be able to talk about those techniques with, which is something that I would do um, in my high school classes as well, right? I would have my students talk about some of the techniques that they're using. So that was a really fun opportunity to do so myself. So I think that is everything for today. Um, I will see how this goes. I would definitely be interested in continuing to share and just try to document my creative process as much as possible. So we'll see how this goes. But in the meantime, if you have any commiserations, anything that you would like to share, about your creative or knitting process, I would love to hear from you. So you can absolutely comment down below. You can find me on Instagram as Crafty Contemplations and on Ravelry as Craftsy Val, and I'll put that information in the notes as well. So until hopefully next time, bye and be well.